If you can't focus for 10 minutes without checking your phone, your brain is not weak, it's overstimulated. And here's what nobody tells you about that. This isn't a personal failure, this is by design. Every app, every platform, every piece of content you consume has been engineered by teams of neuroscientists and behavioral psychologists to hijack your attention and keep you coming back for more. We live in an era of constant notifications, unlimited pornography, digital fast food, and short-form content that's scientifically optimized to be addictive. The result of this hyperstimulation isn't just that you feel distracted, it's that your concentration has been systematically destroyed, your motivation has become completely unstable, and you've developed chronic procrastination that makes even simple tasks feel impossible to start. But here's the thing that should actually terrify you. This isn't going to get better on its own, it's only going to get worse. The attention economy is worth billions of dollars, and every single day, these platforms are getting better at exploiting your brain's reward system. So the question isn't whether you're affected by this. The question is, how much control are you willing to give up before you decide to take it back? In this video, I'm going to give you the complete blueprint for a dopamine detox that actually works, not the watered-down TikTok challenge version, where you sit in a dark room for 24 hours and call it transformation, but a real, sustainable system for rewiring your brain's reward mechanisms so that you can focus, execute, and build the life you actually want instead of the one that's been designed for you by algorithm engineers. If you want focus, discipline, and mental clarity, subscribe to this channel right now, because everything we do here is about mastering your mind, not fighting it. We don't do motivation porn, we don't do empty productivity hacks, we do the deep psychological work that actually creates lasting change. So if you're serious about taking back control, hit that subscribe button, because the strategies I'm about to share with you are going to fundamentally change how you think about focus, motivation, and self-control. Before we talk about the detox itself, we need to understand what dopamine actually is, because most people get this completely wrong. Dopamine is not pleasure, it's not happiness, it's not some toxic chemical that you need to eliminate from your life. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter of motivation, anticipation, and reward-seeking behavior. It's what makes you want to pursue goals, chase opportunities, and take action toward things that matter. Without dopamine, you wouldn't get out of bed in the morning, you wouldn't pursue relationships, you wouldn't build businesses or create art or do anything that requires sustained effort over time. So when people talk about dopamine like it's the enemy, they're completely missing the point. The problem isn't dopamine itself. The problem is the overstimulation of your dopamine system through artificial, effortless rewards that give you massive spikes without requiring any real investment of energy or attention. When your brain receives too many dopamine peaks from artificial sources too frequently and without any effort required to earn them, something catastrophic happens to your reward system. Your brain becomes less sensitive to normal levels of stimulation, which means that the things that used to motivate you, the things that used to feel rewarding, suddenly feel boring and pointless. Your baseline motivation drops, and you become increasingly dependent on these artificial spikes just to feel normal. Think about it like this. Imagine turning the volume on your speakers up to 100 and leaving it there all day, every day. Eventually, your ears would adapt to that volume level, and normal conversation would start to feel like whispers. That's exactly what's happening in your brain when you constantly expose yourself to high dopamine activities. You're cranking the volume up so high that real life, meaningful work, deep relationships, long-term goals, all of it starts to feel silent by comparison. And here's where it gets really dangerous. When normal life feels boring, when work feels like torture, when studying feels impossible, when building anything long-term feels unbearable, you start to rely even more heavily on those artificial spikes to escape the emptiness. You scroll more, you consume more, you seek out more intense stimulation just to feel something, and the cycle spirals deeper and deeper until you can't focus on anything that doesn't give you instant gratification. Now let's talk about what a dopamine detox actually is, because most people completely misunderstand this concept. The mainstream version of dopamine detox that you see on social media is usually some extreme challenge where people deprive themselves of all stimulation for a day or a weekend. They sit in a dark room, they don't talk to anyone, they don't use their phone, they don't eat anything enjoyable, and they basically just suffer for 24 hours and then declare themselves transformed. That's not a dopamine detox. That's just self-imposed misery with no long-term strategy behind it. A real dopamine detox is not about suffering, it's not about becoming a monk, and it's definitely not about eliminating all pleasure from your life. A real dopamine detox is a strategic process with 3 specific goals. First, you're reducing artificial dopamine spikes that come from low-effort, high-reward activities. Second, you're retraining your brain's sensitivity to normal levels of stimulation so that real work, real learning, and real progress start to feel rewarding again. And third, you're restoring your natural motivation so that you can pursue meaningful goals without constantly fighting against your own biology. The ultimate objective of a dopamine detox isn't to make yourself miserable. It's to make work stimulating, to make learning enjoyable, and to make discipline feel natural instead of like a constant battle against your own impulses. When you properly reset your dopamine system, tasks that used to feel boring suddenly become engaging, projects that used to feel overwhelming become manageable, and goals that used to feel impossible start to feel exciting again. That's the real transformation, not sitting in a dark room feeling sorry for yourself, but fundamentally changing your relationship with effort, focus, and delayed gratification. Now here's something that most people don't realize when they try to do a dopamine detox. Most people try to change their habits consciously through willpower and discipline alone, but their subconscious patterns keep pulling them back to the same behaviors over and over again. You can consciously decide that you want to focus. You can consciously commit to eliminating distractions, but if your subconscious mind is still programmed to seek instant gratification, to avoid discomfort, and to prioritize short-term pleasure over long-term success, then all of your conscious efforts are going to feel like swimming upstream against a current that never stops. If you want to rewire your mental programming for focus, discipline, and success at the deepest level, check out the Subconscious Millionaire System in the description below. This isn't about surface-level habit change. This is about reprogramming the operating system of your mind so that success-oriented behaviors become your default mode instead of something you have to constantly force yourself to do. We'll come back to this, but first, let me give you the complete step-by-step plan for executing a dopamine detox that actually works. Step 1 is to identify your personal dopamine spikes, because everyone's dopamine profile is slightly different based on their habits, their environment, and their psychological triggers. The most common artificial dopamine spikes that destroy focus and motivation are social media scrolling, pornography, junk food, excessive gaming, and short-form content like TikTok or Instagram Reels. But you need to do an honest audit of your own life to figure out which specific activities are hijacking your reward system. For the next 3 days, pay attention to what you do when you're avoiding work, what you reach for when you're bored, what you use to escape uncomfortable emotions, and what activities you can't seem to moderate or control. Write all of this down, because you can't fix what you won't acknowledge. Step 2 is to remove the biggest spike first. And this is where most people make a critical mistake. They try to eliminate everything at once. They go from consuming all of these high dopamine activities to zero overnight, and they wonder why they relapse within 48 hours. You need to start with the single source that's most addictive for you and the one that most directly sabotages your focus and productivity. For most people, this is either social media, pornography, or short-form content. Pick one, remove it completely, and don't add anything else to the list until you've gone at least 2 weeks without that behavior. Once you've successfully removed the biggest spike and you've stabilized without it, then you can move on to the second biggest, and so on. Step 3 is to create structured boredom. And this is the part that most people resist because it feels unnatural in a world that's designed to eliminate every second of empty space in your attention. But here's what you need to understand. Your brain needs boredom to reset its reward threshold. Boredom is not a problem to be solved. It's a feature of a healthy nervous system that allows you to recalibrate your expectations and rediscover interest in normal-level stimulation. During your dopamine detox, you need to deliberately create periods where you're not consuming any content, where you're not being entertained, where you're not filling every moment with input. This means taking walks without your phone, reading physical books slowly without multitasking, journaling without distractions, and scheduling deep work sessions where you're alone with your thoughts and your task with no escape routes available. Step 4 is to replace, not just remove, because here's the brutal truth about behavior change. If you create a vacuum in your life without filling it with something intentional, your brain will fill it with the same destructive patterns you're trying to eliminate. If you remove social media scrolling, but you don't replace that time with anything meaningful, you're going to relapse within a week because your brain is going to be screaming for stimulation, and the path of least resistance is always going to be the old pattern. So when you remove a high dopamine activity, you need to immediately replace it with something that's engaging enough to hold your attention, but low enough in dopamine output that it doesn't perpetuate the overstimulation cycle. Replace scrolling with reading. Replace gaming with building a skill. Replace consuming content with creating content. Replace empty stimulation with productive work that moves you toward your goals. Step 5 is to build a reward system that works with your biology instead of against it. Your brain is fundamentally a reward-seeking machine, and if you try to operate without any rewards at all, you're going to burn out and quit. The key is to structure your rewards so that they come after effort instead of before it, and so that they're proportional to the difficulty of the task you just completed. After a 2-hour deep work session, reward yourself with something enjoyable but controlled. After a challenging workout, allow yourself a small indulgence. After completing a difficult task that you've been avoiding, give yourself a break that feels earned. The difference between healthy rewards and dopamine addiction is that healthy rewards come after effort, and they're consciously chosen, while dopamine addiction is all about seeking rewards before effort and allowing your impulses to control your behavior. Now let's talk about what you're actually going to experience when you do this, because if you go into a dopamine detox expecting it to feel easy and pleasant, you're going to quit the moment it gets uncomfortable. The first phase is withdrawal, and yes, that's exactly what it feels like. You're going to experience intense boredom, irritability, strong cravings for your old patterns, restlessness, anxiety, and a general feeling that nothing in life is interesting or worthwhile anymore. This is completely normal, and it's actually a sign that the process is working. Your brain is realizing that it can't get its usual dopamine fix, and it's basically throwing a tantrum to try to get you to go back to your old behaviors. This phase typically lasts anywhere from 3 to 7 days. And this is where most people quit because they interpret these uncomfortable feelings as evidence that something is wrong, when actually it's evidence that something is finally starting to change. The second phase is rebalancing, and this usually starts to kick in around day 5 to day 10 of your detox. This is when you start to notice subtle improvements in your ability to focus. You feel slightly more calm and less hijacked by your impulses. Your sleep quality starts to stabilize, and you begin to experience moments of genuine interest in activities that previously felt boring. The cravings don't completely disappear during this phase, but they become less intense and less frequent, and you start to feel like you're regaining some control over your attention and your behavior. The third phase is clarity, and this typically emerges around the 2 to 3 week mark if you've been consistent with the process. This is when you start to experience natural motivation for meaningful work. You notice that you're procrastinating less and executing more. Your productivity increases significantly without feeling forced, and you develop a genuine enjoyment for tasks that require sustained focus and effort. This is the phase where the real transformation happens, where you're not just abstaining from bad habits out of willpower, but where your brain has actually recalibrated its reward system so that productive behaviors feel inherently rewarding. Let me tell you exactly why most people fail at dopamine detox, because if you understand these mistakes ahead of time, you can avoid them. Mistake number 1 is being too radical and trying to eliminate everything at once without any transition period or strategic plan. Mistake number 2 is not having a clear plan for what you're going to do with all the time and energy you're reclaiming. So you end up just sitting around feeling miserable with no direction. Mistake number 3 is not having a compelling vision for why you're doing this in the first place. So the moment it gets hard, you have no reason to push through the discomfort. But here's the most important reason why people fail, and it's something that almost nobody talks about. A dopamine detox is completely useless if you're still operating with a mindset of instant gratification. If your subconscious programming is still optimized for comfort and short-term pleasure, and if you haven't addressed the deeper psychological patterns that drive your behavior. You can detox from social media, you can eliminate porn, you can cut out junk food, but if your fundamental relationship with effort, discomfort, and delayed gratification hasn't changed to the subconscious level, you're just going to replace those behaviors with new forms of escapism that feel slightly different but serve the same psychological function. Let me be clear about what a dopamine detox is and what it isn't. It's not about suffering for the sake of suffering. It's not about becoming a minimalist monk who rejects all pleasure. And it's definitely not about making your life boring and miserable. The real purpose of a dopamine detox is to regain control over your reward system so that you can choose what you pay attention to, you can choose what motivates you, and you can choose what you pursue instead of having those decisions made for you by algorithm engineers and dopamine hijacking systems that don't have your best interests in mind. The world is designed to steal your attention, to fragment your focus, to keep you constantly stimulated but never satisfied, to make you feel like you're always missing something, always needing more, always one click away from feeling complete. A dopamine detox gives you your attention back. It gives you your focus back. It gives you your motivation back. And most importantly, it gives you your freedom back, because true freedom isn't about having unlimited options and unlimited stimulation. True freedom is about having control over your own mind and your own behavior, so that you can build the life you actually want instead of constantly reacting to whatever grabs your attention in the moment. If you're serious about upgrading your focus, your habits, and your financial future, check out the Subconscious Millionaire System in the description below. Because here's what you need to understand. Success doesn't start with effort. It starts with subconscious programming. You can have all the strategies, all the discipline, all the willpower in the world. But if your subconscious mind is programmed for mediocrity, for instant gratification, for seeking comfort over growth, then every success-oriented behavior is going to feel like pushing a boulder uphill. The Subconscious Millionaire System rewires your mental operating system at the deepest level so that focus, discipline, execution, and delayed gratification become your default mode, instead of something you have to constantly force yourself to do. Check it out in the description if you're ready to stop fighting your own mind and start programming it for success.